Hi everyone, this is Ashley with CT Marina Digitals. I'm going to do a tutorial today to show how to use my new sweep texture overlays in Photoshop. I'm going to do a few different pictures, so it might be pretty lengthy, but you can skip forward if you need to. The reason I call them sweep textures is because I have I created them in a format to where they're the dimensions that they would be of like a sweep instead of just like a backdrop behind a subject, and I'll show you how that makes a difference with how I use them. They can definitely be, unlock it here, resized. Oops, uncheck here. They can definitely be resized for different proportions, but this is how I use them. You can do them in multiple different blending modes. I will say that it's going to be a lot different if you use blending modes, the color of your backdrop. So for this one, I wanted to use a pink overlay, so I changed the backdrop to pink. I go over that kind of stuff in my Facebook group. I also have like the ombre wrap or dress edit tutorial in my Facebook group as well, and that'll be linked in the description if you would like to join. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I will start with the pink one, and I'll kind of do it on this one too, just to show you what I mean by different color backdrops. So I'm just going to go ahead and select all, edit and copy, edit and paste into my image. Resize, I actually want to keep the proportions for this, so I'm going to check this right up here. And I'm going to make sure that I have a little bit on each side, and then I'm going to drag it all the way up. You're going to have extra up here, but that's okay. I'm going to show you why that's okay. And then you can hide this layer. Go ahead and go to your background, go to your quick selection tool and select subject. And then go ahead and duplicate your layer, create a layer mask, press Ctrl or Command I on your keyboard to invert it. And then you can go ahead and make this visible. Right click the layer or hold down Alt and click between the layers and create clipping mask, and that puts, as you can see, it puts it behind your subject. I'm going to go ahead and go on the move tool again. I'm going to click on this layer, and now this obviously doesn't look like, I could just keep it this way and change the blending mode behind her, but and maybe lower the opacity on it. You can definitely use it like that and be done. I don't want to use it like that. I want to make it look more like an actual backdrop. So I'm going to create a crease. And you can do that by, I'm going to go ahead and select here. I'm going to go up to my marquee tool, and I'm going to, usually I would want it to be like right here, but I'm going to go up a little bit higher. And I'm going to select this bottom area right here. I'm going to go up to Edit, Transform, Perspective. I'm going to click this button right here. Make sure this is unclicked up here. And I'm going to drag it out to create that floor. Press that, unselect, and then I'm going to go ahead and grab it. And I'm going to bring it down. Okay, and now you're obviously going to have to clean up the edges, which I'm not going to spend too much time on for tutorial sake, because you should know how to do this. You do need, I do recommend and say you must have experience in Photoshop selling these, because little stuff like this should definitely know how to do to make your digitals look realistic. But I'm just painting off just some of that. And I could go around the whole picture, but I'm going to do a couple of different things first. Okay, so you can play around with the blending modes. Multiply, it's pretty dark. My favorite one to use is soft light. And I'm going to decrease the saturation on the backdrop. I'm just going to go up to my adjustments, hue saturation layer, make sure there's a clipping mask, and then I'm going to bring that down. And now, as you can see, sometimes it depends on what kind of backdrop you're using. I use seamless paper, so I don't have much of a crease there, so I'm going to create one. So I'm going to click on my background layer, my background copy layer. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to go to my brush tool. I'm going to change my blending mode to multiply. I'm going to hold down Alt and select a darker pink on the image. And now brush size I like to play around with, but I'm going to do about 9 for now. And I'm going to come right to where I put this crease in the backdrop. I'm going to click off to the side and hold down my mouse. I'm going to hold down Shift, and that's going to make sure that I'm making a completely straight line. And then I'm going to drag it across my image. And then I'm going to go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and I'm going to blur that line just a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to create another layer, multiply, blending mode. I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger. Click off to the side, hold down Shift. Click before you hold down Shift, or else your line will go crazy. Click down, hold Shift, drag across. Decrease the opacity on that, and then you can even add another one depending on how much depth you want to add. Multiply, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Click, hold down Shift, and lower the opacity. And you might have to play around with it until it looks how you want it. You can also keep this on normal and just decrease the opacity. This is where it's going to matter about your background color. I take that hue saturation layer away. Make these a little bit more noticeable now. And the only reason this is showing through is because I have a lower opacity on it. If you are using it on normal blending mode and you have it all the way up, which will work on some backdrops, you're going to have to put these layers above the backdrop layer. And of course, you're going to have to play around with them, like I said before, to make them look a little bit more realistic. I think I'm going to leave that one above. You can blur the line a little bit more if you need to, but I just like to kind of play around with the opacity until it looks realistic. Okay, and then I also want to add blur to the backdrop, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the overlay. I'm going to go up to Filter, Blur Gallery, and go to Tilt Shift. Because I don't want to blur it anymore down by her feet. I'm going to drag this all the way down to her feet. I'm going to drag this down because I want blur to be there. I'm going to drag this up. And you can play with it over here, how much you want it to blur. I'm going to go ahead and press OK. And that added depth to the backdrop. Also, if you have it, if you're using it on normal mode, you're going to want to create some shadows. So you could go ahead and click to create a new layer above the overlay, multiply blending mode, and it's already on that pink. And I'm just going to create some shadow. I like to, sometimes I do it at 100% and lower the opacity, or you can do it at like 20% and slowly add some on. She's far away from the backdrop, so I don't want to add too much shadow over there. You shouldn't need to add too much because some of that's showing through because I lowered the opacity. But again, if you have it at 100%, you're going to need to add in some shadows down here around her dress. Oops. Which I'm going to do that on another image. This one I want to keep my opacity lower. Create a layer mask on that and brush off that. It's not what I wanted to do. Okay, so that is one way, and then you would go in and obviously clean up the edges here on her. You can do that by clicking on her layer mask, a brush at 100% opacity, and just brush off of her. Again, I'm not going to go over the whole image because you guys should know how to. There's just one area, but you would go around her whole body and just make sure that it's completely brushed off of her to make it look realistic. I would also probably add, so if you're needing to add like contrast or anything to her and not the backdrop, you would click on the background layer. I'm going to add some contrast to just her. See, it's just her. It's not the backdrop. Contrast to her. And then if I wanted to add like shadows or something, you could click on that, create a new layer, multiply blending mode. Use a brush at about 20% opacity, select a dark pink, which already is, and just add in some shadows on that side. You always want to select the color of what you're going to be painting the shadows on. You could also just click on the background layer, and duplicate it, and then use your dot or your burn tool and add shadows that way. That already looks a lot better after just adding some shadows and contrast. But that is one way to use it with the blending modes. Creating that crease in the backdrop is going to help a lot in making it look realistic. And again, I only do like the dimensions just to give you more play room in the backdrop. Okay, that was that one. Now I have this one using it on, this was all blue. I changed it all to purple because I really wanted to use this texture for hers. So I'm going to go ahead and select all, edit, copy, and paste. I'm going to resize my dimension, keep my dimensions. Okay, I like to leave a little bit of space on each side because when you add blur, sometimes it sucks the backdrop in. Okay, I'm going to hide it. So, quick selection tool and select subject. Duplicate the layer. Create a layer mask. Control or Command I to invert. Make my layer visible and clip it to my backdrop. I am not changing the blending mode on this one. I want to keep this. I mean, it still would look pretty if you did that. You definitely can. But I'm going to keep it on normal. It's going to be more editing, but it's what I want for this one. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my marquee tool. I'm going to select the bottom part. So I select a little bit higher than where I would normally want it. Then go to edit. Or you can probably right click. Do they have perspective in here? I don't know. I'm just going to go to edit, transform perspective, and I'm going to drag out to make the floor. Okay, and then I'm going to move it down. All right, so this is going to be more editing because I need to add more shadows and all kinds of stuff. This is pretty much like using a digital backdrop rather than an overlay. But like I said, you can also use it as an overlay. I'm first going to create a new layer. I'm going to create a clipping mask on it. Or you can hold down Alt. I'm going to add a gradient. Go into my gradients. I just want a black to white. And I'm going to drag. And I'm going to change it to soft light because I want the light to match a little bit more to her. Okay. Create your layers to add my crease. I'm going to select my brush. I'll select this dark right here. I'm going to do 9 again. Right where I did. You could do this before you do your crease too, if you have a hard time like finding it. But click, hold down Shift. Oops. 100% opacity. Click, hold down Shift, and drag. What am I doing here? Oh, I didn't put it above my backdrop. There we go. And I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger and go right over that one because I don't like how thin it was. There we go. Add blur. Okay, create another one. Now you can this definitely would be easier if you use blending modes on an already creased black backdrop, but obviously, okay. Oops, hold down, click, hold down Shift. Lower the opacity on that. Create another one. Just like digital backdrops, if you want to use it like one, it's going to take a while. You can change like the size of it if you want it to go out a little bit more. Okay, I'm also gonna drag. See, I'm gonna use my burn tool on shadows, and I'm gonna drag it across my backdrop too. Shadows, midtones, highlights. Maybe not. I go back and forth all the time too. I'm going to add another layer. There we go. My son's homesick today. Sorry if you can hear Mickey Mouse Clubhouse in the background. Hopefully my microphone's good enough to where you can't. Okay. That looks good for now. Okay, so now if you zoom in on certain things, this hair is a pain in the butt. But she has really dark hair, so all I'm going to do is go down to her layer mask, get my brush, my white brush at 100% opacity. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Not 100% opacity, lower than that. Did I use this one on? Ah, I used it on multiply, not normal. See? Okay. I already did this edit before, just so I can do it faster for tutorials. I'm gonna drag these underneath and see what it looks like. Okay. Okay. Go up. Click on her layer mask and then brush in. And clean up the edges because you're not going to see the texture on her hair. Typically when you use select subject it works just fine, but she has really curly, like frizzy hair. So this works with her. It just blends right in. And you would obviously go around the edges and clean up all this too. I'm gonna use a sharp brush just so I can get in there better. Again, I'm not gonna clean up, not gonna focus too much on cleaning up the edges because you guys know how to do that. Use a black or a white brush to brush on, black brush to brush off. Go back to my soft brush. See. Okay, I would take a lot more time on this, obviously, if I'm putting it into a gallery, but see, like her wrap, part of her wrap didn't even, select subject didn't even get that. I'm doing a really quick brush off just so you guys can, we can get to the final part of it here. Not perfect by any means. I would want to add some more, like I would go in and take, whoops, clean all of this up. Especially like around her toes. Again, not going to spend too much time on that, but then see some of the shadow is already showing through from the image. So you're probably not going to have to add much using it on different blending modes. Okay. Now you probably hear my dogs. Okay, so she definitely needs some contrast and shadows added to her. So I will add contrast and I will go to levels and I will put in some blacks on there just because the backdrop is so dark. And then you could duplicate the layer if you wanted. There's like highlights on this side of her that I don't really want on the dress or on the wrap. I would just go in and add more shadows to help her blend. And then I would go and add the blur, filter, blur, oh, blur gallery, sorry, tilt shift. And then I would do the same thing I did for the other one. Keep that range right at her feet. And add that pretty blur. After I went around and cleaned up all the edges, I would click on her and I would go to my blur tool and just blur. Oops, sorry. After I flatten it, I would clean up all those edges first. Then go ahead and blur the edges, just the edge for her to blend into the backdrop. Obviously her arm, everything needs cleaned up, but this is the gist of it. I would be very happy with this. Before, after. I want to go back, actually, because I forgot to show you guys, to this one. How different. So I use this on normal and I just decreased the opacity on it. But I could have used it on like soft light and it would have been really pretty too with all the pinks still. If I try to do that on a dark backdrop, select her real quick, you're just going to get a completely different look. Let's come over here and copy, paste, resize. Oops, didn't want to do that. Oops, okay. Okay, so this on screen or on soft light is going to be very dark because the backdrop is very dark. That's why you want to use, it works, that's why I do them, that's why I have so many different color textures, because you want this, I want it to match the backdrop. I want it to be easier to use. If you use a lot of neutrals, you're just going to have to take the time to change the backdrop, like I did on this one, changing it to pink. You can also, if you're just wanting like the floral and not any color, you can just create a black and white layer and merge those and use it like that too. It's completely optional, but the color of the backdrop matters. Okay, that one is done. Okay, so this is just one of my variety textures. There are 3 different packs that you can find in the shop. So this is just texture. This isn't like florals and all. This is can be a little bit easier to use sometimes. Select all, edit, copy, and paste. Hide it. Select her. My dog. He's 10 years old. He's an Australian Shepherd. He's just groaning in the background. Duplicate my layer. Create layer mask. Create a clipping mask. Make it visible. Oop. Totally put it on her instead. This one, so I'm definitely using a blending mode on this one. But multiply or soft light are typically what I use for when I'm overlaying something. But sometimes I'll go through the whole list and I'll find something that I like even better. Sometimes overlay looks good. Hard light on different ones, not this one so much, can look really good. Just definitely play around with your blending modes to see what you prefer. I think I'm going to do a soft light. You can always lower, add, like take down the saturation or whatever you want to do. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. I'm going to grab my marquee tool, I think is how you say it. Edit, transform perspective, and drag. Deselect, and move it. Okay, create my layer. This is the most tedious part in my opinion, to create that crease. I'm just going to start creasing my backdrops and make it easier for myself. Select a dark color. create that clipping mask. I might just do the one line and just add a little bit more blur. Okay. I think I'm going to lower the opacity on this one because she's on that mocha backdrop, so I can do that. If she were to be on a different color, then this would not, it would not work like that. I'm going to go to her layer, add some contrast. I'm going to duplicate that layer. And I'm going to go up to filter and camera raw filter. And I want to deepen those blacks on her. And I want to add some clarity. See, that made a huge difference, especially for the wrap. I want to create a gradient over the backdrop. It's already on black to white. Soft light. Lower the opacity on it just a bit. I go up to adjustments on my overlay, and I'm gonna make it a little bit brighter, and I'm also going to take the saturation down. And then I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to add my blur gallery, tilt shift. Drag this down. Okay. And then obviously, again, go in. This one shouldn't be as bad. It definitely isn't. It's also why it's important to have a similar color backdrop and clean up the edges, like down here around the wrap. Get rid of that. And then I would definitely add in multiply layer above the backdrop, or above the overlay, sorry. 20%. And I would brush in some shadow behind her. It still looks good at her feet. And you have a completely different image to add variety to your galleries. Some clients love them, some clients hate them. Before, oops, after. And that's it. If you have any questions, you can message me on Etsy. If you're a studio maternity photographer, please join my group on Facebook. It is linked in the listing description. I wanted to do a recording clip to add in here, guys, because I just realized it when I was finishing up in Photoshop. When I did my pink one, I might have done it with the other ones. It's honestly like the thing I usually do first, and I didn't even do it in the tutorial. Make sure you are flipping the light. Like I flipped this. The light is coming from this way on my subject, and the light is coming from the other way on the overlay. Make sure you flip that. Right click, flip horizontal. That's it.